Hey YouTube, welcome back to the garage. Before we get back to the frame and doing some welding on it, I got a little side project. I've been kind of worried about my air system not having enough wind for sandblasting and painting and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to add a second pump to it. I'm just worried about my Mastercraft 20-gallon giving out on me sometimes. So as a little side project, I seen on my Amazon that I could pick up a pump for 150 bucks. Now this says it will do 11 cubic feet per minute, I think is what that is. Anyways, so I bought the pump, and rather than spend a bunch of money on motors, I have a couple old treadmill motors that I had kicking around. One actually runs my homemade drum sander here, but I don't have the electronic components to run it. This one is I believe a 3 horsepower treadmill motor. This one has a 2 horsepower treadmill motor in it, but I should be able to power it with the transformer and regulator that it has inside. But this drum sander, I'll show some pictures of it here, but to run it, if I get a little loud, I'll turn that down in the was a little loud, but yeah, manual operation, but it had worked for doing an okay job sanding, but I don't use it that much, and I could really use the power out of it. So we're going to rob the power out of that, hook it up to this motor, and have the motor hooked up to the pump. I got to rig up some kind of bracket for this motor. It's not the greatest for bolting it down, so I got to figure that out. Hook it up to the pump, hook the pump up to the propane tanks, and see what kind of redneck air system I can come up with. So wish me luck. So I got it built, but there are a few hiccups. I wanted to record this to put in the video, and that way we don't have to wait for some extra parts that I think I need to order. What's happening is well, I'll explain the system first, and then I'll explain what's happening, and we'll do a quick test of how long it takes the new pump to pump up a 20-gallon tank. I can only get about 100 PSI out of it. I think the motor is a little bit too small to get me up to 130, but yeah, that'll be another project another time when I find maybe a bigger motor or something like that. But this will be handy if it works as I expect. I can go from 0, because my system does have a small leak, and over a couple days it does drop down to 0. And rather than having pumps run all the time, I can shut them off and fill them up fast. The pump does say it is 11 CFM. The Mastercraft 20-gallon is a 5 to 6 CFM, so I should triple my volume for going from 0 to 100 at least. Should be okay. Most of the tools I want to run at around 90, so I'll play around with it. It was a fun little project, but yeah, and I'm sure I will put more into this. So a little history behind the system. So back when I was looking at air compressors and that, I seen on YouTube about DIYs from fridge compressors. So I picked up 3 fridge compressors from the dump, hooked it all up. That's where I got my regulator from, some hoses and stuff like that. I got my 3 propane tanks from there. Propane tanks are 100-pound propane tanks. They hold about 23 gallons. But the fridge compressor pumps just didn't do nothing. Don't watch those videos. Don't try that. So what I did was I hooked up my 20-gallon Mastercraft and piped it all together and made like a little, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Just where everything comes together in one spot and goes out in one spot, just to have more volume. So that's been running fine. When I'm just doing odd stuff, I just run off the 20-gallon one. But when I'm working in the garage for a full day, I'll open up the other tanks, just so the pump isn't kicking on all the time. I think that's it for history. Let's get you in here and show you what I've done. Okay, so here is the system. This is the new Vivor pump. And then the old treadmill motor. And then this is the old regulator that I had for the fridge pump. So from there, we bring the power down, where's the wire, into what's called a voltage regulator. Now I can variable the speed on this, but I don't think I need to. And then from there, the power comes out and goes into what's called a bridge rectifier. Now that one there is the burnt out one. This one here is the new one, and I got one more spare to see how we can get stuff working. And then from the bridge rectifier, DC power comes out of it and goes into the pump. So when I was doing this, I took this piece, the exhaust port, off so I could take it to town to get the fittings for it. And when I first hooked it back up, once I got this whole system, I wrecked the gasket in here when I pulled it off. So I put RTV gasket in there, and I didn't wait for it to set up. So I hooked it up and it blew all the liquid stuff out. And so I had to redo that and let it dry for 24 hours. But so then from here, we're going to go with an old air line I have up and into this is my input into the system here. So this hose here is from the new pump. This hose here is from the 20-gallon Mastercraft. From there we go through a dryer, we curl into the, let's focus here. Into the regulator. That is the new Home Assistant, what do you want to call it, sensor there. And we have a regular gauge there, and then from there we go through a valve and up to the top one runs over to an air hose up by my workbench. The other one runs out through, what's that, a 4-way, and then down to that. And then we have a tank coming into that, and then another tank full of that hose around. That one goes into that side, the black one goes to another tank. So yeah, it's not redneck at all. Another piece to note that I forgot to mention is on this hose right there, I have a one-way valve on there so I don't get back pressure into the pump. Also, in the opening of this video, I talked about having to make a bracket for this motor, and I put a little piece of the truck in there. The piece of the frame that I cut off a little bit of that and welded it up and made that my bracket for the motor. So we're gonna hook this back up, try hopefully stop blowing the breaker. Oh, the other thing I had to do, just so you know, it didn't go perfectly from the start. I had to retighten the belt because it wasn't tight enough. It was spinning and we couldn't get any power out of it. It was just hung up. So let's fire it up and see what happens. We're going to go from 0 on the gauge up to 100 and see how long that takes. Then we're going to bring it down and go 0 and then see how long it takes this one to go. Hopefully it's twice as fast, but we'll see. Okay, here we go. Three and a half minutes. Okay, so that took 3.5 as well. So I've only doubled my volume. Again, with a bigger motor, probably goes faster. I tried to measure the RPM on this. I think I'm right around 1,000 RPM. It is rated for 1,400 RPM. But I'm not overly worried about that too much. Let's let the air out and see how long it takes both of them to fill it up.
Running both pumps at the same time, it took 1:30 to fill from 0 to 100 psi, and then it took another 1:30 for the Mastercraft to go from 100 to 130 psi.
Okay, so the Mastercraft trips off at 130 psi. Now I'm going to test when they trigger on, see which one, what they're set for. This one here I will set to trigger off at 100 right now, for now, till I get the other rectifier and try some other stuff, but let's do another test. So this trips on at 95. This one trips on at 100. I wonder if I shouldn't put them at the same, but I'm not going to adjust this today, but just want to mark these down, mark these numbers down, so you might as well know them too. Okay, so we got 95 on, 100 on, 130 off. Let's see when this one shuts off without blowing a breaker or anything. We'll have to bring that down to 95. Let's shut that off now. Shuts off at 100. So I'm going to call this a success. There are a few little nuances to it and a couple other bugs to iron out, but I'm pretty happy with it. It was a fun little project. While you can continue to watch the time lapse that it took to build this thing, I will put a timestamp down in the comments if you want to fast forward to one little blooper that happened. Yeah, or fast forward to
30 minutes.
And watch that there. So yeah, enjoy. I'm going to clean the garage, and the next video should be welding a frame. Thanks.